Welcome to our podcast, Men on a Mission, where we invite business owners, founders, visionary leaders to share about their expertise, and we'll uncover their geniuses where they will tell us more about their tips and strategies. Today, we have our very first guest, Adeline Ng. She runs Superseed, a seven-figure creative performance agency with team presence in Southeast Asia countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, and Vietnam. She also runs ads in different markets, right? In Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines. And notably, she runs for brands like iQuadrant and Farms, who are major market leaders in the industry. Lastly, she spent a seven-figure ad spend on an annual basis. So today, we are very excited to have her and to uncover everything we need to know about digital marketing, creative performance ads, and how businesses should do marketing in the new world ahead. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Could you share more about digital marketing and where does creative performance actually lie in?
I think when we talk about digital marketing, firstly, we have to put into context exactly what we're talking about when we say digital marketing, because it's a wide spectrum. So specifically for Superseed, we deal with social media marketing, and we deal with some of a bit of SEM, but we don't deal with SEO at the moment. So we are really talking about digital marketing in that respect of putting ads out on social media platforms like Facebook, Google, which are still basically the core markets where Singaporeans are in, right? About 90+% of our population, basically, they are still using Facebook and Google, which is YouTube in this sense. And of course, when we're talking about creative performance, then we're really talking about the mix of using creatives in the social media space and putting them out as ads.
Right. So when you mean creative, right, what are some examples of creative, just so that the audience can visualize? What is it like?
Right. So when we talk about creatives, we are really talking about a few different kind of what we call the assets that we launch for ads itself. So that includes things like videos, that includes things like the images. And of course, that also actually includes things like copywriting. So all of this combined is what we term as creative. And in general, I would say that everyone has creative, but we have done the creatives in a kind of different way for direct marketing.
On your bio, it actually says you help business owners build brand authority. Can you expand a bit about what does that actually look like?
When we say brand authority, I think firstly, you have to understand why we want to build brand authority for business leaders. I think from a marketing point of view, if you were to give advice, right? If you were put as an authority, as a teacher, an authority figure, there is a lot more weight towards what you are saying in the market. So firstly, it's understanding that context. So just imagine if you're going to someone who's a teacher or someone who's actually a doctor, right? When they give you a diagnosis or when they share tips or when they share certain things that you should be doing for your own good, right? In those kind of situations, you generally do not question these people, right? And because of that, then authority is where it lends its weight, right? So when we talk about building authority for business leaders, we talk about how when we are doing ads, we use education as a basis. We use different forms of building that sense of knowledge, that sense of knowledge beyond the masses, to give and lend authority to these figures or to these business owners, so that when the business or the brand actually say something, it comes from a place where there is a sense of higher authority. It comes from a place where there is a obvious knowledge gap, right? And because of that, then the white masses, the general audience would take this advice or would take these ads in a different manner. So if we were to look at something where the ads are just generally what we call transactional, for example, transactional meaning that you are putting out discounts, you're putting out scarcity, you're putting out basically a transaction based on general discounts like Friday sales or stuff like that, versus an ad where there is knowledge, where there's authority, where it actually shows you exactly why you need a certain product, right? Or why you need a certain service. Then you go beyond looking at just price value. And that's why authority becomes the bigger topic in this sense. And how can we build that in the ads itself? And how can we land that from all of the ads combined together to keep building that brand voice and authority over time?
The very interesting part that you mentioned here was the idea that you tell people or you tell the audience why they should buy your product or service, right? Could you explain a little bit more than that? Because I would assume that as a consumer, you kind of know what you want to buy. That's why you want to put your money on the table, right? So why is there a need to teach them why you need to buy a certain thing?
That actually boils down to one of the key things that our company always look at when we are helping the companies to do their marketing, which is what we call the unique problem-solving perspective. In most cases, businesses reach out to people who are already what we call problem-aware or solution-aware. And those are people who already know they have an issue or already know that they have certain solutions to that issue. And they're just basically searching for a solution, right? To give an example, the easy example would be, for example, if you have back pain, you have backache, back pain, and you already know that the key thing that's actually causing your back pain or backache is the chair that you're sitting in, because you're an office worker, you stay in your chair almost 7 hours of the day, and that is contributing to your back pain. So that's a problem-aware crowd, right? They are basically aware of that issue being caused by the chair. So therefore, now it will lead into the solution aware, where they're looking for chairs, the right chair, right? And so when we are looking at this in general, the audience is already looking for different type of chairs. Now you want to tell them why you or your chair is different from the rest of the people in the market. What is your chair providing that's totally different from everyone else in the market? Because everyone else could be a cheap chair, good chair, some form of support. But what is so different from everyone else? And why is your chair better or uniquely different, right? What is everyone else doing on the market that is not solving actually the problem that your client is facing? Because most chairs, for example, would be comfortable, but are they, I can't remember what's the right word, but chiropractically or orthopedic?
Ergonomic?
Yeah, ergonomic kind of approved? Are they clinically approved, for example? So those are some of the perspectives then you have to share to your audience, because only by educating your audience will they understand why they need your chair. And why is your chair $300 more expensive than the other chair, which is possibly a branded chair already, right? And they could possibly buy into a brand. But why does your chair with a maybe equal brand or slightly lesser known brand, why is it more expensive and why is it worth that value? And when you are able to expound the unique problem-solving perspective in this case, then you will be able to educate your audience towards the value that you have. And then what you have is a fair value exchange.
Reminds me of the chair brand Secret Lab.
Yes.
So what do you think is Secret Lab's unique problem-solving perspective?
I think Secret Lab, of course, they are very smart. Firstly, there is one thing we notice, of course, that Secret Lab started off mostly being used by gamers. So firstly, they have a very, very distinct market. They were very, very clear about who they were targeting as well. So from that point, it was all about talking to the right audience and sharing, of course, building the brand towards the right audience. So the brand voice, of course, then the whole way that the branding is done is all catered towards gamers in that sense. Then, of course, they added on the unique problem-solving perspective, which was very, very similar to what I mentioned, which was literally about the ergonomics of it. And again, same thing, they didn't cater to general ergonomics. right? They catered more towards the gamers, and the entire language was to share how if you sit in the chair for a long time and you're doing gaming and stuff, it would actually be the most comfortable gaming experience, so on and so forth. Then, of course, the vertical. So one thing that you will realize that when you're niching down and speaking to a certain crowd, that does not mean that this will not be expanded to other relevant markets. Then, of course, we started seeing some of the office workers or offices starting to bring in Secret Lab chairs to their office, because if you go by the same train of thought, right, gamers kind of sit in their chairs for a very long time, but so do office workers, especially desk workers, right? So that started happening. So I think that is one thing that we can see that was very successful in terms of Secret Lab, in terms of how they did their marketing.
I was on the topic of brand authority, but it kind of led to a very interesting conversation of unique problem-solving perspective. So how does these two tie in together?
Well, you generally have to be an authority, or rather, I should say, you can only be an authority when you have a very unique perspective. In most cases, if you were to speak to any founders, any business owners, right, they don't have the sense of, my product is just so, right? There's a very, very strong perspective as to why their product will actually ultimately change the world. In most cases, I like to say this, business owners or founders, right, they find or they started their business really because they think that their product or their service can change the world. Perhaps not in the ultimate big sense, but can change the world or change the industry or change people's life. So there is a very strong perspective as to what is right, what is wrong in the market or in the general industry or even in the world. I guess the best example would be, what's his name now? Our electric cars.
Tesla, Elon Musk.
Yes, Elon Musk. My brain skipped a little bit of a beat. Yes, but if you take Elon Musk as an example, he's one of the biggest example of having a very, very strong perspective and therefore founding a lot of different companies that serve different markets, right? And all of that ultimately goes back to one big perspective that he needed to solve the energy issue in the world, literally, for him. So, of course, Tesla is great. It's very big. There's SpaceX and everything. So there is a ultimate perspective, which was that he wanted to solve a big issue. And the big issue was energy, right? And from there, it spun off to different companies. So when we talk about brand authority, only people, I would say, with very unique perspective or very strong perspective to say, I think this is right and I think this is wrong, then they will be able to share and expound what they really believe in and ultimately bring in that authority into their brand as well.
So my question to you would be, what is your unique problem-solving perspective when it comes to paid ads, creative paid ads?
For the longest time, I would say that when we talk about social media ads, especially interruptive ads, what we call interruptive ads.
Can you expand on that, interruptive?
Yes. So when we talk about interruptive ads, basically before we jump into interruptive, ads are kind of split into two different types of ads. One is what we term as pull ads, or usually termed as something that you search for. So imagine that you are a consumer, you are looking for a chair now. So you go online and you search for a chair. So then the marketing is already done and you are looking for something. But when it comes to social media ads, they generally lie in the space of what we call interruptive ads, meaning that you are actually interrupted while you are scrolling through your videos, while you're scrolling through your YouTube and stuff like that. And when you are interrupted, it's not in the best state of mind actually, or you are not searching for the solution as of the time that you are scrolling, right? However, then how do you make it such that this interruptive ads, in this case, is something palatable and something that people can not just like, but also take the conversion, what we call the conversion action. Because there's also the other point of view where you have very palatable ads. So one of it is, for example, Thai ads, what we call the Thailand type of ads, where it's extremely heartwarming, very touching, or very funny. You either go, oh, or you laugh like crazy. But the end outcome of it is not a conversion or sales-based ads, right? It is a lot more brand building in that sense. So then the big perspective out there is that all of these ads are kind of split into different camps, right? You have the brand building ads, which are highly produced, very much creative. Then you have the interruptive but sales-based ads that are extremely, in most cases, non-palatable, right? And then you have the other ones which are search-based or pull-based ads, which in most cases that is in its own camp, right? So what Superseed does that is very different from everyone else is we don't believe that brand building or creative exists by itself, and sales-based interruptive ad has to be non-palatable. In fact, we think that any ad that go out is a brand building exercise, technically. So if you look at a lot of the marketers out there, there's also this argument between ugly ads and pretty ads, right? There's the argument that ugly ads work. And I don't deny that they work, right? They do give you sales conversion. You can get sales from there. But ultimately, then does it go back to your brand? Right. In long term, I call this harvesting everything that's right before you. But do you plant seeds for the future, right? So we believe that when we are doing creative performance, which is our term of putting creative and brand building together with the ads that are sales-based and direct and interruptive, right? To put together and say, hey, why can't we have ads that are actually sales-based, can convert, and still be brand building? And the fact is, I think it exists, and it is something that we have done. For example, we have done recently for an interior design company, right? Everything is geared towards lead generation, is geared towards getting sales and revenue. However, the brand building part of it is not lost at all. In fact, we put out the ads out there, and anecdotally, from the founder's perspective, he shared with us that in the industry, there was actually a buzz because they felt the ads were so different. They knew about this particular brand that was going around, and not even that, the interior designers who were involved in the ads were like literally stopped and asked like, hey, are you the guy in that ad? So there is definitely a space where it's very different, and our unique problem solving perspective in this case is that lead gen is not a non-palatable way. It can be done well. It can be done with brand building in mind. And it's what we call creative and performance kind of married together, if I put it that way. Yeah.
Is creative performance for every company out there?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
Can I apply creative performance for any sort of businesses?
Okay. I believe that should be the case. Perhaps the element or the percentage of creative may be varied across different industry, but there will be a way where you can break through in terms of using creative, in terms of making it palatable at the very, very least, right? The worst kind of ads I feel personally, in my very strong opinion, is those that really just go out there regurgitating and then trying to harvest all of whatever you can. And it's repetitive. So with that comes an issue that in the long term, no matter how you do, right, every time you put out an ad that is non-palatable, you are essentially killing karma. you're essentially killing karma points from your company. So definitely in every industry, in every niche, there is a way to do it where you're not just killing karma. I would say you're harvesting at the same time and planting seeds at the same time. Yeah.
There's a very, very interesting perspective that you talk about harvesting and seeding. So you talk about this idea of creating palatable ads, right? What are some examples that any company can take away to apply that layer of, palatable in ads?
I think one of the things that goes back to a bit of the education and authority, and then the other part about palatable is really, if you think about it, when people educate, when they share things that are not normally known, when they teach, right? Usually those are very palatable ways. The only caveat is we teach not by talking down to people, by sharing the perspective and sharing the problem that is out there. So by highlighting problems and sharing perspectives and how it can be solved, these are educational routes that you can take towards actually bringing your audience in without going the unpalatable route.
Are there some examples where you can, any creative formats that you guys use to make it palatable?
For me, there's a mix between videos and, of course, images, right? But for video, when we are talking about making it palatable, one of the things that we can talk about is adding different social layering part to it. When we talk about social layering, that would be basically involving relationship in the video itself. But to appear not cringy, again, I think it goes back to the substance of the video. Having very strong script writing, very strong content in terms of what you're trying to bring out, and making sure that, again, firstly, it's not talking down to people, right? And also, one of the other things that we have also realized from past experiences is to not also dwell too much on a pain that your client may be facing. So there is what we call pain and aspiration when we deal with marketing, right? And what we want to do as marketers is to share what is the pain usually, and go towards the aspiration, right? And share what is the future aspiration, right? The issue is that most marketers also think that marketing can only exist in a very pain-targeted way. So, for example, I mean, just rubbing it in when basically, let me share with you this. Your clients, sometimes they already know that they have an issue, right? Or the end clients, I'm talking about your end target market, they already know they have an issue. But if you don't give them a way out, or you don't tell them that this is fine, I understand you, and you just keep rubbing salt into the wound, you will end up with something where your entire audience going to say that they do not agree with you. When pain is too much to bear, what do? You run away from it, right? So that's one part of marketing that's kind of funny, because most of the time, if you speak to marketers and all the frameworks out there, they will actually tell you pain, problem, solution, AIDA, right? You agitate, and then so all of that lies with let's rub salt into the wound as much as possible, right? But how can you use different elements instead? Like whether is it comedy, whether is it being lighthearted, adding in that social layering, the relationship kind of layer to that, and then just letting people know, I understand your pain, and here we have a unique thing, a unique solution that I'm sure is different from the market, because the market has totally different problems as well, right? But just make sure not to rub too much, because we have seen ads that's gone the wrong way, literally rubbing salt into wound. And the ad, don't get me wrong, was beautifully produced, right? It was extremely well crafted, but the end result of it was that basically the market rejected it. from the point of view of no sales and from the point of view of literal outrage at the pain being highlighted even more when there was what is seen as cannot be done. They cannot resolve it further. Yeah, so you have to give people a way out. Yeah.
I want to expand this point on social layering. Recently, when I was scrolling Instagram, I saw this very interesting video. It's those kind of, because I follow this channel called Humorous Resources.
Okay.
Where they expound on people's pain when it comes to working in the 9 to 5, right? So I follow that channel. I love the content of it because it's just very relatable and funny. And I just happened to scroll past, not the Humorous Resources, another video where the context is about a group of people, right, running the same business. They were having a Zoom meeting. And the boss was asking about the campaign preparation, right? And one of the lady was trying to tell her in a very nice way that we planned for everyone to fly overseas in order to do something for the campaign, which is utilizing company's budget without the boss's permission, so on and so forth, right? After that, to the end of the video, in the end, they reviewed it, right? And the boss was speechless. How can you, prepare something like that, utilizing company budget without letting me know, right? And then they were just like very happy about it. Oh, we already bought the tickets, by the way. We will be flying tomorrow, so on and so forth. And then when I look at the captions, right below, it is a campaign giveaway, right? It's a campaign giveaway for their audience, for a SaaS company, to invite some of their super fans or their clients, right, to travel overseas together with them for the campaign. Then immediately I was like, wow, is this an ad? Right? Is this a campaign giveaway ad? So to the point that I don't even realize that's an ad, right? So could you expand a bit about this idea of social layering and how is it possible to seamlessly weave in certain content like that, selling something that people don't even know that they're sold by,
I would say when we are looking at the social layering, there's many different aspects to it. What we can look at to seamlessly sell something is to actually put yourself out of that context first. Firstly, you shouldn't be selling. I think one of the issues then with certain type of marketing is that if you put yourself right from the start as I'm going to sell something, right, then that's already a telltale sign. So what would be a customer journey that would end up with the product that you have? What would be a customer journey that will end up with the service that you have, right? So that's one part of it. I think the other part of it, when we talk about social layering, is then to add on perspective to it. So I guess the word of the day is perspective. I realized that we are kind of running around this word called perspective, right? I think adding a lot of perspective into it. And what I mean by perspective is to literally look at it from different relational layers to this. For example, I would guess that if you are looking at the SaaS giveaway, right, in the first place, is talking about traveling somewhere, right, with the boss money. So that is actually the relational layer that they are employing in the entire ad itself. It's basically, I'm happy because I get to travel, right? And I'm not paying for it. My boss is paying for it. Yeah. Right. And most of the time we know that, at least for as far as I can remember, business trips have always been that way, right? It's like, it's on the company's money. Woohoo! Right. So it's riding on that very perspective that you're looking at it from an employee point of view, right? Not the employer point of view, and then using the ad to expound on that perspective and to share how, your staff is going to be so happy. So when you think about it, it's not coming from the employer perspective. It's actually coming from the employee perspective. Right. So if you think about perspective in that sense, it can give you insights as to what are the possible angles that you can actually, I would say, portray the entire story and end up with the service and the outcome that you're gearing towards.
So let's say I want to sell something, right? I want to sell this bottle, right? How would we think about adding a perspective, a relational layer, right, in order to sell something like that without making it salesy?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot right now. Okay. Right. So I'll share maybe 4 different ways that you can think about it. The first one is the easiest way, which is the direct way. And that's the way that most direct ads would do, which is, are you thirsty?
Yeah.
Right? And that is a pain that you have, and that's a solution that I'm providing to you. Right? So that is the first way, right? If you think in terms of Maslow hierarchy of need, that's basically solving an immediate pain point, an immediate need that you have. So the next part that we can talk about is what we call ASMR. Okay, so what is this? We are talking about elevation of mood. Right. So if we are talking about mood wise, then we are talking about different emotions they can feel because of this particular bottle of water. So perhaps instead of looking at this bottle of water from a drinking perspective, would it be literally just, ASMR, you open the bottle, you can hear.
Oh, like those Coke advertisements.
Yeah.
I always remember.
Yes, correct. So from that point of view, then you're literally looking at using emotions. Of course, for most of us, if we do the ads that we want to sell a product, then these emotions should be positive. But of course, we can also see that mood expansion can be negative as well. What do I mean? Right? When it's negative, it means like, for example, you are grossed out by something, but you can't stop watching. Yeah.
I know. Those pimple blackhead. And I try to squeeze it. A lot of people find it very shock to watch.
Yeah. I don't belong in that group of people, so I would skip that video. But yeah, so that there in itself still lies certain, what I could call elevation. There's that shock feeling, but it's also created by this sense of grossness in there, right? Okay. The other one that we can talk about is what we call the quest towards relation. For example, if I look at this bottle of water and I tell you about a story of how I can always remember my dad caring for me, bringing me water every single time, right? Then you are going towards a very much more interpersonal, you're going into a relationship kind of perspective. And that's when your story does not need to lie with the water itself. Now it goes into transforming relationship. Now this bottle of water is a timely thing for me to give to you as a sense of I'm taking care of you. Right. So then we build relationship in that sense. So you can think about it from a relational point of view. Then the last one, which is a bit harder for most people, would be related to an ultimate quest, ultimate purpose in life kind of perspective. So the easiest one that I can think of usually that people share about is, for example, they quit their jobs and they end up traveling and they're sharing about something, right? Those are ultimate purposes and quests and common things that people actually are very, very passionate about, or they want to, yearn to, but may not be able to. So for water, maybe it is not particular to that passion quest, but it can be talking about clean water.
Clean water.
For example, if I'm talking about clean water in Africa, there's a way bigger purpose than for example, than the rest of the stuff that I talked about. We talk about the importance of clean water, what it serves in the world, and so there is different purpose that you can build into that particular product or services. But then, of course, this is off the top of my head. Brainstorm session. There's a lot more that you can expound on. Just thinking about it from this 4 different kind of perspective.
I want to jump into strategy, right? I think we speak a lot about creative.
Yeah.
We speak about the 4 layers that you can go with to social layer your video ads so that it doesn't seem very salesy, right? It seems like a you're pursuing something more than just the product itself. So I think that is amazing. They also talk about the idea of brand authority, right? And how do every business owners have a certain sort of UPSP, unique problem solving perspective, and that helps to build brand authority. Now I want to go into the paid ads portion.
Yep.
Right. So can you share a bit more about paid ads? Right. Because I think right now there's a lot of controversial statement or understanding when it comes to paid ads. Right. I saw this statement on Reddit, which says, I want to destroy YouTube ads.
Yeah,
right?
I get that.
So what is your perspective of paid ads, right? And in terms of the macro perspective, right, where do you see paid ads in the world right now?
I think there's always going to be a market for paid ads, meaning that as a business, if you're not employing paid ads in general, there's a very huge market that you're missing out. However, that being said, paid ads should not be the only marketing mix that you're talking about, meaning that there should be a mix with other content and other outreach that you have in your pocket. So if you were to rely heavily only on paid ads, and that being your only strategy for the marketing side, that would end up being quite disastrous in the long run. It goes back to the part about harvesting and seeding. In general, paid ads, if I split it up, most people deal with SEM, which is the search-wise, and then you have YouTube and Facebook or Meta now, depending on which era you're from, right? And if we put aside SEM, because I think SEM in itself, there is a mix of paid ads being put out there, and there is a mix of pull ads, meaning that people are actually searching for you, right? So that is in itself quite, I would say, the right mix, SEM by itself. So the part about interruptive is where it irritates people, right? Because literally, like I mentioned just now, you're scrolling your Facebook, you're watching a video being happy as you can, and then one ad literally pops up to destroy your scrolling time, right? So that is in itself, if we depend on only this strategy, and this is the only strategy, firstly, you're going to see that there's an overexposure of yourself or the business on that particular platform by just basically bashing the audience over and over again and trying to sneak in. It's akin to having a party. Right, everyone's having a party and you're not invited, but you go running in with cymbals and going, "Hi, I'm here, buy from me," and everyone's just having a party, right? So that's literally how it feels like if you were to depend on paid ads as the strategy alone. So that being said, like I say, if you ignore paid ads, the issue with that is then you have I wouldn't say issue, but the thing is you have to live with a very, very long runway for your ads, for your content to take flight. That's one. And of course, being non-interruptive, it means that you are not being in market for people to discover your brand. Why do I say that? Because the fact is that interruptive ads exist for a reason, because you are able to put your brand out to people who may not have ever seen you otherwise, right? Palatable or not, right? If I do not have Facebook ads out there, you probably will not be searching for certain type of products. And if you're talking about even when we talk about the different awareness of clients and different customers, right? We talk about this thing called unaware, problem aware, solution aware, you aware, and deal aware. So when we look at you aware and deal aware, those are people that are already familiar with your business, right? Problem and solution aware, they are not yet familiar with your business, but are already searching or perhaps have at least an inkling of what they think should be a solution if they want to embark on that journey of searching for it, right? But then therein lies the issue, right? Because most people are actually in the unaware, problem aware. So why do I say unaware? Because most people say, what do you mean by unaware, right? How can I be unaware of a problem in that sense? Well, the fact is, if I talk about backache, right, I could be very much unaware that I have backache that is related to something else. Right. So then reframing and sharing about that issue, only then the person will become aware. So if we have a big majority of people lying in unaware and possibly problem aware, but not yet solution aware, right? Then the issue is if you don't use interruptive ads and you don't share your perspective, you will never be a business that can reach out to these people because they are not actively searching for you, right? So the way that I see it is that we have to employ what I call the BAU, business as usual, right? To gain revenue, to get people to actually understand and buy things. And then you have to have the other side of the marketing mix, which is more organic, brand building, content building, and everything to not just serve your customers, but serve your customers so well that they become your marketing leads as well. What do I mean by that? The very simple way to think about it is, do you have referrals? I'm sure there are businesses with referrals, but are you actively pursuing it in order to build that as a lead gen or revenue source, right? So that is in itself one of the most effective mix. If you think about it, word of mouth has existed forever, right? And in fact, there are companies that only exist based on word of mouth, but then without looking at interruptive, then they're kind of restricted to that group of people. So look at interruptive and paid ads as one form, referrals and basically anything that goes with word of mouth as another form, and then organic content building, all of that should still exist together. Yeah, but for the person who has, for example, on Reddit, wants to
I want to destroy YouTube ads and my
destroy
Android.
YouTube ads, well, I suggest just frequency capping the ads itself.
It sounds like a lot to start, right? So for a business, how much budget should they set aside for marketing, right? And based on this budget, how should they start?
This is like one of those questions where I need to pull out my whiteboard. Okay, firstly, to know a budget, there's no way for me to tell you what exactly the budget is. It would actually depend on your numbers. So perhaps the easier way to put it is, how do I find the budget, or how do I quantify what budget I should be using for marketing, right? Firstly, you need to get all your numbers correct, and you need to understand all the different numbers that you have. On a very easy note, like for example, like e-commerce or certain service-based industries, of course, then the first thing that you need to understand would be what is things like your average order value, or at least how much do people spend with you when they make a first-time purchase, right? Why do I say that? Because without understanding that, there's no real way for you to determine a marketing budget. Marketing in itself, whether it's expensive or not, is very, very subjective. What do I mean? I had this question, and I hear this question all the time. Is $5,000 for my ads very expensive? In fact, I just heard it yesterday when I had a strategy call, right, with one of my clients. I'm spending $2,000. Is it expensive? So, question to all of you guys at home. Is spending $2,000 expensive? Well, think about it for a little bit. Well, the fact is, if you're spending $2,000 and you're getting zero returns, then hell yeah, it's expensive, right? But then if you're spending $2,000 and your returns are $10,000, $20,000, then it is cheap, right? So it is not about being expensive or not expensive. The only way that I can think of looking at marketing in terms of budget is to really think of it as what is the ROI? What is the outcome that you can expect from the budget that you're putting in? So why I talk about average order value goes back directly to this, right? Because if you are very clear that when a person comes into the door, right, when they buy something with you, whether is it a service, a product, you are very clear of the amount that they are spending, and you're very clear of the percentage of revenue you're getting from there, then you know exactly how much you have or you can cater for your marketing. The simplest example, if a person walks into the door, right, and he spends $1,000 with you, right, then with $1,000, you know that roughly 50% goes to all of your other costs. That means 50% is your revenue, right? Then technically, your marketing budget can go up to 50%, meaning that you can spend, this is not budget in total, but you can spend $500 then to bring in a customer through the door.
But that will mean break even, right?
Yeah. So why this is still acceptable is because most of the time, your clients or your customers don't buy one time from you. So there's a difference between an average order value versus a lifetime value. That being said, that's really dependent also on your business model. Is your business able to function on a cash flow, or do the revenue only come in later? And if it comes in later, are you able to take a front end, what we call a front end burn? Meaning that even though it is a break even, technically you are bleeding in that sense on cash flow, but you know that the lifetime value is going to be $3,000, right? So this person will, over a span of 2 years, spend $3,000 with you. So then is spending $500 to bring this person into the door worth it? Right? So are there other expenses? So all those are kind of the numbers that you have to have in mind before you can actually think about the marketing budget. But I would say the immediate, straightforward one would be to use your average order value, right? And then understand how much people are actually paying the first time they come in and how much you're earning from that. And then determine, possibly based on this, perhaps not everything can go to marketing because there's other expenses and costs. Perhaps a 10%, 20%, you determine the percentage, or 50%, So then based on that, then you have I would say, somewhat of a safe kind of marketing cost that you can look at, right? Marketing budget. The other part that I wanted to share a little bit on, since we are talking about budget, is that I think in general, I've come across a lot of different businesses, so it's very strange to me. Perhaps because I come from an agency point of view. But here's the thing. Most of the business actually have a fixed marketing, they call it expense, right? So firstly, from a business owner perspective, expense is on a P&L level. That means it's for accounting, right? That is expense. But firstly, you need to really look at the mindset of ROI instead of expense. That's number one. Right. Second part is marketing budget should not be fixed. Why do I say that? Because the thing is, if you were to spend $10,000, that's bringing you $100,000, right? And you kept your expenses or your marketing expenses at 20, that means you have just kept your revenue that you can earn, right? So if you kept from the start and have a threshold for it, then that really means that you're capping the revenue size of your business as well. Of course, taking into account that there's other things that perhaps if you have operational limitations, then you may want to cap that, right? But if not, then marketing expenses or budgeting should not be kept like that. it should be looked upon as a ROI function, meaning that if I'm really able to bring in that amount of revenue, can I put in more dollars to bring in that revenue? And if you can, I would say go for it, because in terms of social media world, in terms of paid ads, sometimes it's not going to last forever. What do I mean by that? At the present moment, most of the platform, if anything, are all algorithmic first, AI-centric, meaning that things are changing as we talk. Literally right now, I have no idea if Meta has just changed their algorithm. And they probably have, because they just rolled out Meta AI, right? So what you're seeing working now for your ads for this month may not work for next month. And if you have just kept it with that mindset, right, and it was bringing you money and revenue, then the sad truth is perhaps next month, even if you were to up the budget, then unfortunately it will not, or it might not bring in the same kind of results or better results by then. You may see diminishing returns and stuff like that. So just be very aware that as you are putting it out as a budget, that it should be a fluid thing that, at least in my perspective, that business owners should look upon it as a ROI kind of perspective and be fluid and understand that you need to shift according to the times, and especially when it's bringing in returns.
I want to hold the thought on the mindset, right? We will delve into that further. But I want to give an example to business owners out there who are considering this point about, average order value. So say, for example, I run a beauty salon or a clinic, right? And my average order value is about 2,000, right? So how will I backtrack to count and then to get that marketing budget for the team to do something about it?
So if you're a beauty salon, of course, I'm going to oversimplify this for the purpose of going through the numbers, right? Let's say that you are a beauty salon. So firstly, $2,000. How much of that would be considered revenue from that? So for example, let's say that $2,000 is based on package and whatsoever. So after deducting costs and all that, you know that averagely, whatever that you sell, you make 40 or 50%. Let's make it 50%, right? To make it easier to count. So that is 50%. That means $1,000. Say, for example, for this particular salon is intent on scaling up. Therefore, their lifetime value is a lot higher, and therefore they're willing to spend all of this on marketing to bring in more
$1,000.
$1,000 on marketing, right? So now you have cost per acquisition of a single client being $1,000. The next number that you have to backtrack then is then what we call the distinction between lead and customer, right? So whenever you're running a ad campaign in general for service-based industries, right, then you have people who are leaving their contact details with you or making an appointment with you, right? That would be considered a lead, but not yet a customer because they have not paid for it. And between lead to customer, there will be a dropout percentage. The usual percentage when it comes to this, for example, is that only 60% of the people who made an appointment would actually turn up and become a customer. Well, if you go to the salon, you don't just turn up for an appointment. You literally go there to get your hair done, right? So, or beauty done. So in that case, then you are looking at cost per acquisition is $1,000, right? But your cost per lead needs to be a lot lower because you're catering for the 40% fallout. Or let's make it easier. If we make it into a 50% fallout, that means that your cost per lead has to be $500, right? So with a cost per lead of $500 and 50% of them not turning up, that means that when you're looking at the number itself, right, the cost per acquisition becomes $1,000 because only 50% turn up, right? So using cost per lead now, right, you can then backtrack. The rest of the numbers pretty much as a business owner may be a bit harder for you to backtrack. But using cost per lead and the average number of people that you want to bring in, then this is where you can define a budget already. Let's say you are looking at bringing in 20 customers. 20 customers will then be 40 leads that the agency or your marketing department needs to close. And you have 40 leads, means that cost per lead is $500. That's 40 times 500. So that is, in essence, the general kind of budget that you may put out specifically for ad spend.
20,000.
Yeah. So if you're looking at that from the ad spend perspective, right, that is just ad spend. So if you have a marketing department, that will be for the ad spend. The question now would be, can you find an agency that can bring down the cost per lead for you? Because that is what you're able to stomach, right? $500. But that may not be the lead cost that's actually walking through the door. Right. Now, can you find an agency that can bring in a cost, the lead at a cost per lead of, I don't know, $250, for example, right? And if you can, what is the agency fee that you can factor in altogether? Basically, your overall marketing budget is $20,000, for example. Can an agency do all of that within $20,000 and bring in perhaps better results? Yeah. So that would be how I would look at it in general.
Let's look at the mindset of businesses that you work with, spending a huge figure or 7-figure on an annual basis. How do you think they're different from the mass majority out there? And what kind of businesses can actually spend $1 million or more on ads every year?
I think firstly, there is definitely business model that is involved. That's number one. And they are also considered market leaders of their own right in each of their industries. So there is basically two different type of mindset when it comes to playing for ads. For most of the first kind of mindset, we are looking at a lot of, the easiest example would be e-commerce, right? Because when it comes to, for example, e-commerce, right, the average order value in general would not be as high as a service-based industry. In general, I'm of course doing a very blanket sweeping statement, but in general, if you look at that, then it is not about spending a lot of money, but it's about spending efficiently, because it's very much kept to a threshold of the AOV as well, right? But when we are looking at market leaders or very big service-based industry companies, they are in essence looking at LTV rather than AOV. LTV meaning lifetime value. That means their business model has already evolved such that they can cater for a front-end burn funnel. That's number one. And number two is that they are also catering for something else extra, meaning that they're willing to pay to become the biggest market domination, right? Number one. And they are also willing to pay to push people out of the market, right? So when we say pushing people out of the market, why do we say that? Well, simply because when we look at the social media platforms, right, if you have run ads before, you will notice that on certain occasions like December and stuff, it becomes more expensive than normal. Why is that so? Simple fact, it's just auction and bidding, right? So there's a whole algorithm behind that. But the essence of it is that if someone is willing to pay more for a lead, then they will get most of the leads. And you will need to outbid that person. The essence of it is that. So imagine now if you are a market leader and I want to price out all of the smaller industries. And because I have a business model now that can cater for the lifetime value, right? Then this market leader can essentially bid as high as possible and run their ads in such a huge amount that you overwhelm the market, right? And the rest of the players who are just coming into the market will find it so expensive, because most of the time when you're entering the market, obviously the kind of pockets that you have, the kind of cash reserve that you have, and the kind of business model that you have may not be as matured as the market leader. And therefore, essentially, the newer entry players will find it hard to even be bidding in the same space or be paying for ads in the same space. They would have to look for very, very different methods, guerrilla methods, to perhaps get some form of market share. Yeah, so I think that's just two very big different kind of mindsets when it comes to these ads. And some of our clients are definitely more in the second one.
So does it mean that as a small business owner who don't have the ambitious goal of hitting market leader level, right? Does it mean it's just not worth it to hop onto paid ads?
Absolutely not. It's in fact the other way around. If anything, if a small business owner, depending on what is the definition of small business owner, right? I would say that paid ads has the strength of being one of the only way that you can look at numbers and be able to optimize in incredible ways that at a speed that the rest of the channels cannot afford. What do I mean by that? Simply because you are paying, right? You have all the platforms, the numbers that you have, the speed that you're getting results to tell you this ad is working, this is not working, this is the part that you need to improve on, that's the part that sucks, you need to kill that ad. All of these are data and feedback that can only come fast because it's a paid ads platform. And they need to feed that info to you because they want you to pay them more, right? So all of that can be also, I would say, if you are doing organic content and stuff like that, yes, you have data and analytics and all of that. But the speed of it is something that you cannot get versus a paid ads platform. It's just not the same simply because one is organic and one is paid, right? And therefore, I think that for small businesses especially, to be nimble in this time now, to be quick and to be efficient, to bring in the revenue fast, then paid ads is actually one of the most essential thing that you need someone to have a very clear idea about what to improve on, what to change, and what exactly are the things that you need to do. So I would say that paid ads should be one of the weapon in the arsenal for small business owners even.
So if I were a small business owner, how small can I start with?
Well, technically, if you were looking at Meta, they always tell you they can start with $5 a day. So I would say that you can start with any amount, but remember that paid ads is still a paid ads. That means you have to pay to play, right? So I would say that you would have to bite the bullet at a certain point in time. And if you're putting out too small an amount for something that is expensive, I'll give you an example. If I have $3 to buy a McDonald's meal that is $5, I just simply can't, right? So that's the problem with paid ads as well. So if you are paying $3 to bring in a $5 lead, you can. It's like, duh, right? So at certain point in time, there's still the amount that you need to be very clear about and to understand is your business, the cost per lead for your business, what kind of cost per lead are you estimating? Because if you are paying $5 a day for $20 cost per lead, then yeah, it's not efficient. And it will stretch out and you may be spending empty money, what I call empty money. Because
so in your experience, what is the cost per lead range?
Okay, my experience is slightly different from what everyone else would have in the market because I deal more with service-based clients, right? So service-based clients, really, they range from anywhere 10, 20, all the way up to a few $100s. That's all okay, right? And I would also caution against here's the funny thing. I just said everything about cost per lead, but I also caution against everyone who's saying that you can just get cheap cost per lead. Because there is another part of the equation which is called lead quality. Right? So I may be straying a little bit from topic, but I think this is quite important. When we talk about lead quality, right? Let's put it this way. If we want to bring in leads, it is not the hardest. But to bring in lead that is qualified and that is actually interested in making a conversion is where it makes a difference. Right. So Meta has made it so easy such that you can literally launch a campaign with probably just an hour of watching some tutorials, right? And you can launch a lead form campaign, for example, and bring in some contacts who may be interested in setting up an appointment. But if you don't know what you're doing, right, and you're opening up the geography, so case in point, one of our clients tried running the leads, right, but she ran to the wrong geography, or she mixed the geography, not understanding that certain geography would not be searching, or rather would not be the right interruptive ads.
Right? Like she ran to Malaysia, for example.
Yes. And the issue with that is that this particular group of clients, they will only be searching for her and then flying in because she's based in Singapore. So interruptive is not, in the first place, is not the right strategy, right? But regardless of that, the issue with that is that once you open up to Malaysia or different geography, right, where the population size is totally different from Singapore, firstly, it's going to tilt your results. And secondly, the cost per lead will be very much lower. So everything goes towards the Malaysia market, for example. We run for our clients, Malaysia and Singapore, and we distinctly separate them out. For example, you need to have different ad accounts. I would suggest different ad accounts even, and then they're run differently. Because the cost is not the same, the lead size is not the same, the quality is not the same as well. So if you are to just base on cost per lead only without going all the way down to acquisition or conversion, right? And someone's promising you a 50 cents cost per lead, just be wary. Not that it's totally not possible. I think just dig deeper to see what's the quality, how does it convert, and whether these leads are distinctly yours to say.
I want to talk about platforms, right? Because from a business owner, I think there's a lot of other platforms out there like TikTok, Xiaohongshu.
Yes.
Right. So in your case, for business owners that just want to get started, what would be your recommended platforms?
Okay. In general, if we are talking about ease of running, I would say Meta is the easiest for business owners. If you have your own marketing department or you want to run your own ads, right? Meta is actually the easiest in terms of the ease, and also in terms of the ease mixed with the efficiency of it. Meaning that to get decent results and be easy enough to run, Meta is still, to me, number one, right? The other one that I would suggest would be SEM, especially for businesses that are, I would say, if they can choose one, right, and pay someone to do it, then SEM may be a good choice, right? SEM by itself, if you are in an industry that is searchable, then please go ahead to do that. What do I mean by searchable industry, right? Meaning that there are certain industries where people are just not searching for the solution.
What are some examples?
Some examples, financial education, certain form of financial education, right? It's literally not something that people will go, let me go and find how I can be educated about this. Right? They search for the end solution, which is how can I buy this financial product? So you will be missing out on everything else, right? So for that, then SEM is not recommended. The rest of the platforms, TikTok is relatively easy to run. However, the issue with TikTok would be the population, right? So you have to be very clear about who your target audience is and which platforms they are on, right? And TikTok may not cater to all the different types of audience that you have. Plus, TikTok has stricter policies on certain type of industries, financial industries, certain financial industries, certain health industries as well. So TikTok has an issue with that. It's outright not allowed, right? Whereas with Google, YouTube, Meta, they would have restrictions and limitations. You have to abide by their rules, but you can still launch ads there. Yeah. Xiaohongshu, on the other hand, would be only considered in Singapore, I think, in general for, firstly, if you cater to a more Chinese-speaking crowd, or Chinese crowd actually, and it is a lot more for F&B kind of industries. Certain beauty services is fine as well. But mostly for Xiaohongshu, the general crowd right now using Xiaohongshu is they're using it for more of what's fun, where can I go, location-based kind of things. So Xiaohongshu is not all that good for Singapore, at least for service-based. Yeah.
Let's talk about paid ad strategy for different geographical locations. So in your experience, what is it like running ads for Singapore, and how is it different from Malaysia and Philippines?
I think in terms of the difference-wise, firstly, understanding Singapore is an extremely competitive space, right? Specifically for certain types of industries, especially, for example, courses, online courses, educational related kind of things. Singapore is extremely competitive because it's hotly contested for a simple reason. Singapore happens to lie in the crosshairs of being financially and economically strong. That means they are able, general public or general clients can afford a certain amount of spend, and they are English speaking in general, right? So that is why Singapore becomes very hotly contested for by even other countries from US to Australia and all that. So the ads will hit over Singapore, right? And that changes how the landscape is in Singapore. Singapore is basically partly expensive because of that. Second part of difference would be actually cultural differences. What we've realized for even not just Malaysia, Philippines, but even Hong Kong, right? We've run ads in Hong Kong as well, is that cultural differences play a big part when it comes to running ads in different geographies. And when it comes to cultural differences, there's just different pacing in the marketing knowledge as well, and the acceptance of ads. So what do I mean? Specifically to Malaysia, for example, the acceptance of ads where it is extremely direct, the ones that we say non-palatable, are still very accepted in Malaysia. Right. So in fact, that is one of the core type of ads that people take to. Whereas in Singapore, because of the sophistication level, because of the competitiveness, and also because of the Western influence, Singaporeans tend to be a lot more nuanced, prefer a lot more subtle kind of ads, and they don't like the direct, what we call the non-palatable ads, right? So when it comes to running ads in Malaysia, we have to cater for that. We also have to cater for language differences, simplification. Also, definitely the big difference between the target audiences as well, right? Because of the way that they actually see themselves differently. Malaysia also has multiracial population as well. So speaking to the different groups has to be very, very distinctive. So in Singapore, even though we are multiracial, right? Generally, if you were to speak English or you launch your ads in English, you will get a mix of crowd, regardless, right? But if you were to launch ads in Malaysia and you are, for example, targeting more Chinese population, you definitely have to launch in Chinese language. Yeah. English language would not be able to attract the same crowd versus Singapore, for example. So there's distinct differences running for both kind of, even though what we look as quite similar kind of population mix, but distinct differences.
I want to move on to the next topic now, because we have elaborated a lot on creative, right? And how to, I think the gist that I'm getting is the way you approach creative is being able to add that social layering, right? So that you are able to run ads sustainably and palatably, and that builds authority.
Yep.
And then we also talk about paid ads, and there's a different strategy when it comes to paid ads. So overall, this two pie, do you see it as something that is separated, or does it come together?
Definitely they come together in a sense that when I'm talking about paid ads, I can't run without creatives in that sense. But what kind of creatives, right? So it is, to me, everything comes together. What we look at is even having our paid ads strategies be part of the brainstorm process of creatives. Because honestly, when we look at it as an entire discipline, right? When we talk about paid ads and all that, if we look across the board, right, there's no way that you can just pull out one segment and say that paid ads and then this is creative, right? In fact, the paid ad strategies will be able to also inform creatives on what are some of the things that are working, how's the angling like, because they have more of a knowledge of what the numbers are showing, the platform numbers. And for us, there's also this thing called AdSense as well, or what we call ad continuity, contia in cinema terms, right? So it goes from the start all the way to the end, from the point where clients have the first inkling through the ads to the landing page to the actual conversion itself. Entire thing is linked. So there's no distinct parts that we can just pull out like that and say that this is distinctly different from the rest. They serve different roles, but they are all together. Yeah.
Can you give an example on how it, the AdSense continuity, right? How does it flow?
I think the easiest thing that you can think about is, have you ever been into an ad that shows you something, and then when you click into the landing page, you're like, but that's not what you were talking about, right? In essence, when we talk about ad continuity, it's basically, firstly, being very congruent in the message that you're bringing across. For example, just now we talked a bit about like pain and aspiration. So for me, if I'm looking at a certain pain point, that may be the pain point that appeals to me, right? And when I go from the ad itself, I clicked into the ad because I saw a pain point that I went, yeah, that hurts. I need a solution. And when I go into the landing page, for example, where I'm making an action to leave either my phone or so on and so forth, right? And the landing page speaks totally of something else, a different pain point, then I would basically go, that's not what I signed up for. Thank you, bye-bye, right? So it's what we call clickbait in that sense. But it's even when it's not as extreme as a clickbait, right? Even when it's not extreme, the sense of disjoint from you know me to you don't really understand what I mean can create that drop off for conversions. So if you have an issue with a drop off of conversions on your landing page, there's a few different things. It could be the landing page is not good, right? Or it could literally just be that your ad is saying one thing and your landing page is saying another thing. And therefore, your client is confused, they're not sure. And when someone's not sure, they will not sign up because contact details are not something that you want to give out to strangers randomly. Yeah.
I want to talk about AI. It's a big buzzword that everyone is talking about right now. So how do you think AI has affected the way we do creative performance?
I think two aspects, right? Because there's AI that we use, and then there's actually AI that the social media platform is using, right? So for the longest time, everyone seems to think that AI is a new thing, right? AI is not new because it has been around forever. Social media platforms are using it. I mean, the fact is, Facebook, Meta has long been in the artificial intelligence game. And in fact, if you think about it, since the longest time, they have already been running things like using artificial intelligence or AI to look for audience sets, right? To create audiences that match your audience, the client list that you can upload, and target them. All of that is a form of AI. The thing that is different is how fast it's evolving right now, right? So AI for the social media platforms is changing so fast that they are becoming a lot more targeted. They are becoming, or I should say, they are reaching a speed and a level where perhaps human intelligence may not be able to match up anymore. So what do I mean by that? In terms of strategy, for the longest time with Meta platforms, right, I would discount a lot of the functions that used AI because I had better way of doing it. The humans were able to outwit the AI and were able to be cleverer in selecting different things, right? But we have come to a point where AI has already gone to such a level that Meta, Google, whichever platforms it is, there's a certain level where the AI is already functioning very efficiently and human capacity cannot keep up. So meaning that even if I were to say this blasphemous thing, which is a crazy thing, for the longest time, we have been able to say, let's choose interest targeting, and we are very clear on the customer avatar, and we are able to get very distinct audience sets. Our recent progression has been that literally giving Meta the free play to look for the audience in a wide set without targeting is actually working better than something that we distinctly target. So that's an example of how AI is actually changing the landscape itself. So in terms of how it's being launched, in terms of the strategies that we're employing on the social media platforms, it has changed. And we have to evolve and be at a level where we can say, yeah, unfortunately, human intelligence is not able to keep up with this particular pacing anymore. We let the artificial intelligence take over and recognize that that is then the way that we need to play. What are the other ways that we can optimize? So we change the way that we launch ads in that sense. Then on the other hand, of course, from the creative performance agency point of view, is AI has affected us in terms of how we work. And of course, in terms of, I think, especially creative assets that we are putting out. Right. So I think has been for the 1 year or 2 years, like for the longest time where people have been saying, oh, copywriters are going to become obsolete, right? We have ChatGPT. I mean, depending on, again, how caught up you are, 3.5, 4, whatever, right? And beyond. So ChatGPT is coming out. Copywriters are going to become obsolete. And that's a huge thing for us, right? Because if we look at it for Superseed, right, copywriting is what we consider one of the biggest creative assets as well, that spans literally from the start to the end, right? And then we have to look at AI and see AI can help in different forms. And if we were to just blindly adopt AI, the issue is, as of now, AI is still mostly searching for things, learning, and then using that to reproduce results, right? Which means that it can only reproduce or it can only produce results that are as good as the search functions or as good as the stuff that it can look for. So it does not build in inherent things like human experiences that different people have. Brand voices cannot be replicated that way because brand voices are born out of business owners' experience, founders' experience, which are human experiences as of now that AI cannot encompass yet, right? Someday when we are able to download our brains, that probably will not be true. But as of now, that's of the case. So then we look at AI more as a tool that we can use. How can we use it to help us to make things a lot more efficient, a lot better? So in terms of how we look at even our agency, then it's not about discarding AI because it's a new and scary monster, right? It's not about adopting AI entirely and using AI to run everything. It's about how can we become the engineer, how can we become the driver of this particular tool that can give us good results at an even better speed than before so that we can drive the results that we desire. So we took a very different stance of saying, not just saying, no, we don't want to use AI or we entirely adopt AI, but we took a more of a stance of how can we build whatever that we have in theories, in fundamentals, to then drive this machine to give us the outcome that we want in a better way. Yeah. So I think even as probably the hot word right now is Sora as well, as Sora is coming out and all of that, the incredible results have been seen by millions and everyone's so excited about that, right? I go back to the same thing, right? Perhaps certain parts of the elements can be replaced very technically, right? But how can we then become the engineer? How can we take all our social layering, our fundamentals, our theories and all that and drive Sora to create the results and outcome that we want? Yeah.
I think this last segment, I want to make it really actionable for the audience that are hearing this or watching this. I'm going to give you a budget like any other business owner might think of. And then I want you to tell the audience, how will you think about doing marketing in general? Because I think today we broadly covered digital marketing and what are the options, but there are also companies that are doing offline traditional marketing as well, right? So how will you think about splitting this up, right, in order to help drive growth in businesses? So say I give an example, maybe we're selling back to the bottle, the bottle. Right, so we're selling this bottle here, right, as a aqua, okay, maybe no brand, a water company, right? And for us, we'll be like, okay, we have about monthly budget of 50,000 to run marketing. And this is apart from all the other marketing costs like labor, maybe agency service, production service, so on and so forth, right? Just ads alone. Right? How will you advise that business owner to spend the 50,000?
Does this include the offline marketing or this is purely for social media marketing?
I think we'll be including.
Okay.
Yeah, so how to think about it even?
I think first part, without going into like exact split, I think first part of it would be to really understand how much of your revenue is coming in from the offline marketing that you are already doing. And in terms of that, is it efficient, right? So once you have the offline marketing budget that you already have catered for, I think you should put it aside from the social media marketing first. So split that up very cleanly so that you have a very clear sense of what are the returns and what are you intending to get out of it. So first part, split your offline and online marketing. Second part would be then to look at it from a objectives point of view. what would be your objective and intention and outcome of using this marketing budget? Most of the time, business owners will say revenue lah, right? Yes and no, right? Why I say yes and no? Because if you are starting out marketing, right, the start of it, you have to cater a little bit for what we call the trial and error, right? There is unfortunately no real way of saying very distinctly that this is going to 100% be the right way to do it. However, what you need to do is to look at it from an objectives point of view, right? Firstly, what is the revenue or the end result revenue that you can live with? And secondly, is there any secondary objective as well that you can gain from doing social media marketing? I give you an example. Just now we talked about it. We talked about how interruptive ads, right, can expand yourself into a totally different client market. Right. So if that is a secondary objective and you're looking at splitting, for example, your revenue from your new client base, understanding that client base, then that becomes could be something that you can look at and not just the revenue alone. Right. Because if you're looking at parallel verticals or different markets, right, it is not 100% that the same markets or different markets will give you the same revenue, right? So what kind of revenue are you expecting out of it? And it can and should be adjusted as you go along. So split that, be very clear about objectives, understand what is your primary objective in terms of revenue, understand what's your secondary objective, whether is it new market, awareness, brand lift, whichever that you decide it is. Once this is done, you need to then think about what are the platforms that you're going to go for, right? And in terms of this, you are thinking about where is your customer avatar likely going to be lying in. Water is pretty much not the best example in the sense that everyone needs water. But perhaps if I were to say that this is a certain type of water that has certain kind of minerals that you will be gloriously beautiful after drinking, right? Then you probably are looking at a specific type of target audience, right? A very specific type of age group, perhaps different gender as well, right? And then in terms of that, you will be able to understand roughly which are the type of platforms that you want to employ, right? In Singapore, at least, most of the time, if we are talking about 30s to 50s in general, we're still looking at Meta as a very big platform. Meta and YouTube as a very, very big platform. For TikTok, while it is an up-and-coming social media, why I say up-and-coming is because that the platform is still not fully matured on, to me, at least, on the ad side, right? It's still improving and there's still, I feel that a bit of gaps. But TikTok, in essence, then there's a totally different target demographic that you're going for. And interestingly, it will shift as well. As of now, we are talking about slightly younger kind of demographic. And interestingly, on the flip side, you also have the 50s, a lot of ladies in the 50s who are scrolling TikTok as well. So you have a wide split where you have like literally the young demographic and the older demographic up there. Then you want to consider also your own product in terms of price point, in terms of which platform is conducive for what kind of products as well. For certain kind of lifestyle products or beauty products or health products, I'm talking about health like for food and stuff, perhaps TikTok could be a good platform. Meta could be considered as well. I would say TikTok is still relevant in that sense. But if you're talking about, for example, a much more expensive kind of product, service, then possibly you may skip TikTok and go direct to Meta and YouTube, right? And if you're going into something that is very distinct, very high-end, business based, then you may go into YouTube and LinkedIn, right? So then decide on the platform. if you have the capacity, engage an agency, right, to really think about advising on whether you are reaching out to the right customer avatar or you are going for something that is a totally different market, perhaps a problem aware crowd or unaware crowd totally. And that would change again the mix of the platform that you are using, right? So once you have decided on a platform, don't overthink it. That's my biggest advice. Start with a budget in mind, with the end goal in mind, and start throwing things out, right? Start putting the ads out and review them consistently. So one thing that is very, very scary for me, at least, when I see some of the business owners running the marketing, is that they have very little touch points or view about the marketing data that comes back. And essentially, the marketing department is running for like a month or 3 months with no major adjustments that is coming back. Firstly, if it's new, that's definitely a no-no, because it's highly unlikely that if you are new to running ads on social media, that this campaign run would be optimal from the start. Secondly, if you are spending 50K a month, or at least if you're saying that you split the budget in half, offline is 50K, offline is 25K and online is 25K, that's still 25,000. There's a decent amount of budget. And I would say that you need to be looking in on the results, at least on a weekly basis, if at the very minimal. Right. And on a weekly basis, that would give you very clear idea and understanding of whether this marketing mix is working. Firstly, to understand whether it's even bringing in revenue, number one, so that you have enough time to do a switch if you need to. And secondly, then is once it's working, to then look at what is the next step in optimizing. Right. Once it is optimized, then we can talk about scaling. Right. And if I just backtrack a little bit, I talked just now a bit about just putting your stuff out there. There's a rationale for this. You should be working with something that is not in your mind perfect already. Why do I say that? Because if in your mind is perfect and you get that result, it's kind of fixed already at the maximum that you can go. What you need to do at the start is really to get what we call the minimum viable, right? And that still means that it should be on brand. That still means that it should be to the right audience and everything. But it does not need to be perfect, right? And launch that first to get the results, because we can think whatever it is. And as marketers, I can vouch for this. We can think, we can gauge, we can predict, but the market will tell you actually if this is what they need, what they want, or you're telling them the right message. That is the only feedback that you can get that is real. And I would say feedback is strongest when people put money on the table. So everyone can tell you, I think this will sell. But only when they pay for it, then you are actually certain, you are definitively having a clear indication that this is selling for the value that you wanted it to go for. Yeah.
So let's say I decide 25K on social media marketing and the platforms that I'm going for is maybe Meta and TikTok, right? Then what next from here? What do I prepare next? We'll just go into then this goes a little bit into the full campaign structure already, and also thinking about your marketing funnel, right? If are we going back to using this bottle of water? The star of our show.
Okay. Well, if you are using a bottle of water, firstly, you have to decide on the marketing funnel. Are you getting them to straight purchase from your page itself, or are you getting them to do something else in order to lead to the bottle of water? Let's say some of the clients that I run for, they would maybe have a webinar, for example, to share about this fantastic minerals inside, right? That's going to help you look gloriously beautiful. So rather than looking at just selling the bottle up front, we do education first, and then you go into selling the water later. I want to make a bit of a distinction here, because some people are extremely against this, right? When I say webinar, right, I refer to any form of education in a video. So this does not mean that you need to stick to a form of webinar where you go into a webinar room or Zoom or so on and so forth. But think of it as, how can you educate people on what is so special about your water before you get into the selling stage. Right. So first thing you need to know then is to really think about this marketing funnel. Are you going to be selling this bottle of water immediately when people go into the page? Or are you going to be doing like a 15 minutes video, for example, that talks about this video, beauty minerals inside, and you even get a checklist or whatever it is, right? Leave email messages. Then after that, go into the next page where you actually sell the bottle of water. Right. So once that is done, once you have your marketing funnel out, then you need to decide what are the assets that go into building this entire marketing funnel. So what will be the front end assets? Front end meaning how you're reaching out to people on the social media platforms, the ones that go on the paid platforms, the ones that you're putting money on. That includes whether you're using images, videos, and copywriting as well. Then the next part of it would be the pages and the videos that is for education or for selling the product itself. So again, same thing, you're going to think about what is the creative assets that go inside, or the assets that go inside depending on what it is, and how is anyone going to do the purchase, what we call the exchange part of it. How do they pay for it? Where do they get it? Is it delivered to their house? Right? And that is all the front end aspects of it. For people with teams, you probably also want to think about integrations and automations. What happens when they're led from one place to the other, and what's the best way for you to track them? Whether is it you're using just hardcore tracking by UTMs and integrating that throughout your page, or you're going to be using GA4, so on and so forth, right? So think of that all together. Once that entire funnel is ready, right, then you can start thinking about launching your ads. And when you're thinking about launching your ads, then we go back into the campaign itself. You think about who are your customer audiences, right? Your target avatar. Just now I mentioned right now AI is super crazy in terms of targeting people, but still you can define in terms of a broader match of audiences than before. So you probably look for example, ladies, people who are interested in cosmetics, so on and so forth. Put that into your customer, right? Your ad sets, and then put that in with your creative assets for launch. You'll probably also need to think about the budgeting in terms of each single campaign. Right. This will be extremely detailed if I go into it, but the main gist of it is make sure that you are spending at least almost equal amount of money on each of the creative assets that you have, so that you have a very clear indicative performance of the campaign and the ad set. That means ad set and asset. Sorry, ad set means your target audience, right? So once all of that is launched, then you can look at having results to then go back and optimize, or perhaps some of them are not working at all, just kill that off, right? So I would say that once you have launched it, probably you will want to wait for a significant time. In this case, it's usually about 3 days before we can see the results coming in. Right. So there's again 2 schools of thought over here. First part is after you've launched a campaign, usually it does take time for the campaign platforms to optimize and find the right algorithms that work for you. And generally that takes about 3 days. So sometimes campaigns, they would say, don't touch it for 3 days, and then you can observe and do changes after that. Most times for me, generally, I have not really seen anything that doesn't work in 3 days, within the 3 days, start to work brilliantly after. So you can just take that into account as you're watching the results come in, and take it as a first kind of indicator as you're launching the ads itself. Yeah. Once that is done, then turn off the ones that don't work, continue the ones that work, and see if you can optimize further. Adjustments of budget can happen as well. So whatever that doesn't work, you can turn it off. Can take the same budget to put into the other campaigns. Usually for Meta, not so much for TikTok and the rest, but usually for Meta, there is an advice that you should not be changing your budget crazily. So look at scaling or optimizing with 20% changes in your budget up and down, as opposed to just doubling the budget suddenly on the campaign itself. Yeah. Of course, once the whole campaign has been established and all that, then there's a lot more things that you can think about lah. From a marketing point of view, then are you looking at this person coming into the funnel, purchasing one, and that's it? Or how are you going to remarket to them? Are you going to upsell them other things? Or are you going to make them buy other stuff that is related to beauty or water and stuff like that? Then how can you extend all the different values that you're looking at to maximize the entire campaign as well? Yeah.
Let's look at a case study, right, from I think one of the more recent brands out there in the market, Prism.
Okay.
Yeah. So could you maybe break down, the success of Prism, what attributed to it, and what are they doing right in the creative performance space?
Okay, so for Prism, very interestingly, one thing that they employ a lot is what we call UGC. For Prism, if you are familiar with their ads, you generally will not see Prism putting out things like huge discounts and stuff. But in fact, what you see is influencers, big time or small time influencers, sharing experiences, sharing about the new products and all. So one of the things that is new, I wouldn't say new, but has been on the market and very effective, especially for lifestyle kind of products, would be UGCs, what we call user-generated content. That is, under user-generated content, technically, user-generated content in itself means that it can be a wide array of different type of content. That can be reviews, that can be statics as well, images as well. So it doesn't have to be videos, right? And there can be basically anything that a user puts out there as a content beat. But what Prism has employed in their marketing campaigns generally is that they have been hiring influencers to put out bits where it is still extremely lifestyle. So it looks like UGC, but it's 100% created by the company itself. Yeah. So the interesting part about that is when it comes to lifestyle content or ads, then people do trust familiar faces. So the power of influence is something that we cannot underestimate. And the power of influence, in this case, it's funny because we're talking about influencers, but they have not been employing or using very big time artists, right? So where I think they did brilliantly well is they managed to use this group of influencers who are still very, I would say, reachable, very within reach kind of feeling. They are not big time, right? But still have that very down to earth, very next door, someone that we feel that it's possible that they actually just live next door to us, right? And
girl next door.
or guy lah, depending on which ad you have seen, right? But literally it's that, and they have power. And that really, I think, lends a lot of power to the Prism brand itself in terms of the product takeoff and stuff like that. Yeah.
So to end off this podcast, thank you so much for your time of sharing all your golden nuggets with us. Right? How would a person who wants to work with you, right? What is a customer journey? What does it look like?
Right. For now, I actually offer a strategy call for business owners, specifically for service-based business owners who are intending to really up their revenue and scale their business. Right. And if you already have some sort of experience, at least running ads, and you're not quite sure where to go, right? You have probably spent some time doing ads. It's either not working out or something is not quite right because you can't figure it out. Or your marketing department is too busy, can't cater to this pie of the business. Then you can book a strategy call with me. Usually what happens during the strategy call, I would be going into understanding what are the choke points of the business, and I will share some of the key actions that your business can take in order to improve the marketing or at least get some results first. Right. And of course, if you like to, then I can share with you how Superseed can work with you for your marketing as well, and we can go from there.
All right. Thank you. That's all for the first episode of our Men on a Mission podcast. See you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.